Okay, let's turn now to Emet Vamuna, page 86. You can stand up for this because this is a prayer for movement. Emet Vamuna koto, Emet Vamuna koto, Emet Vamuna, Emet It's a fascinating passage, how the Israelites stood at the Red Sea, and men and women were singing alike. Now, if you've ever been to an Orthodox community, there's one thing you probably won't notice too much of. Men and women do not listen to each other because a woman's voice, well, men lose all their common sense when they listen to women sing. So the question is asked, if that is the case, how could women sing with the Israelites, with the Israelite men, at the splitting of the Red Sea? How could they not be distracted by one another? But it's a wonderful teaching. If your mind is on God, then you really don't have to worry about being distracted. And if you are distracted, it's a sure sign that what? Your mind is not focused on God. Isn't that a wonderful lesson for today? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I was reading a very interesting report this past week. What will be the state of religion in our country in another 50 years? It's an intriguing question. It's a question that Jews obviously need to be asking themselves as a community. Christians and Muslims are also wondering about this. And according to some of the studies, another 50 years, there's going to be fewer and fewer Christians in our country, and people who really don't attend anything. People who are religiously neutral or searching for a religious path. Well, Chinese say that a crisis, the same word for crisis, is also the word for opportunity. And this is where we really need to think about who we are and what is our purpose and what do we really stand for as a Jewish people. Otherwise, it's not inconceivable that Jews will end up like a dodo bird, will become an artifact of history. I'm an optimist. I think if we open our hearts and our doors, many people will find Judaism to be an appealing faith. Now, when you talk to your Christian friends about the Jewish people in particular, they often refer to us as God's chosen people. Chosen people. Bah, humbug, a lot of Jews will say. Well, my grandfather, who was killed by the Nazis, was actually one of them. On his way to the death camp. On his way to the crematorium. He looked at God and he said, God, if we're supposed to be your chosen people, why don't you do us a favor? Choose somebody else for a change. My father never forgot that. We say in Yiddish, it's schwer zu sein a Yid. It's difficult to be a Jew. But I want you to know something, that Jews are not the only ones who believe that they're God's chosen people. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Taoists, Native American tribes, African peoples, also believe that they're chosen by the God or gods. But somehow when Jews refer to themselves as God's chosen people, we sometimes hear a quip. How odd of God to choose the Jews. This statement comes from William Norman Ewer. And it probably captures to some measure the ambivalence that many modern Jews in particular feel about the notion of chosenness. Now, when we speak about chosen people, what are we saying in so many words? We're saying that God has given us a special status. And this idea of chosenness is something that Jews have always celebrated with pride, even during the most difficult periods of Jewish history. It provided a source of hope and reassurance to outsiders. The doctrine of chosenness was proof that Jews were aloof and haughty, a description that made many Jews bristle. But the idea of chosenness is actually one of the most important themes of this week's Torah portion. That God has affirmed you this day to be his treasured people. You must observe his commandments, and he will set you apart in fame and renown and glory. And you take a look at a number of Nobel Prize winners. You might be surprised that over 35% of all the Nobel Prize winners in the last 120 years happen to be people of Jewish ancestry. And you shall be a holy people to your God. And if you listen to the word of God and observe God's commandments, God will set us apart from all the other nations of the world. I must tell you, chosenness is, for some secular-minded Jews, a badge of shame or embarrassment, to say the least. Mordecai Kaplan, one of the most important conservative Jewish thinkers of the 20th century, believed that the time has come for us to get rid of the idea of chosenness. Because really, Jews are not better than anybody else. And the idea that Jews are chosen implies that somehow we're different. Really, we're no different than anybody else. That was Mordecai Kaplan's understanding. I have to be candid with you. I've never liked Mordecai Kaplan. And when I was a teenager, I wanted to write a book disproving everything this scholar ever had to say. Now, of all the books I've written, you might wonder, why didn't I write a book about Mordecai Kaplan? And the answer is because he's not worth it. But the truth is, chosenness comes with responsibility. It is sometimes an invitation for persecution. And people have used chosenness as a battering ram to harm the Jewish people. So what do we make sense of? What does all this mean? I have studied the writings of Carl Jung, a great psychologist. And one of the things that Jung emphasizes time and time again is that if you believe that your life has purpose, if you believe that your life has meaning, then in a manner of speaking, you believe you're chosen. Maybe one of the worst problems that we're faced with a society today, like ours, is that we don't understand the meaning of chosenness. And many people just meander through life without any sense of purpose. They live without fulfillment. They have no ultimate vision as to what their place is in this world. Mark Twain always used to say that the only thing that is more important than the day you were born is the day you realize why you were born. And that's what chosenness is all about. And Jews have a spiritual purpose. But before we can be mentors and spiritual teachers to the world, we first have to become spiritual teachers to ourselves. That is the problem. Because if we believe that we stand for nothing, I hate to tell you this, dear friends, the rest of the world will also think exactly the same about you. Lewis Brown is a colleague of mine, and he retorted to that question, how odd of God to choose the Jews. And he says, not so odd as those who choose a Jewish God who spurned the Jews. It's not so odd, because the Jews chose God. And that's what it means to be a chosen people, to be a choosing people, to affirm that you have a purpose as a Jew and that the Jewish people have much to offer the world, especially today. You know, when I take a look at the state of Israel and how Israel is always helping countries that experience earthquakes, tsunamis, famines. Israel has developed, for instance, for people in Africa, produce that will stay fresher on the shelf for 2 to 3 weeks longer. Israel is teaching people in the Sahara how to create water in one of the driest spots of the world. This, to me, is one of the great visions of what it means to be God's chosen people. A people that's committed to making everyone's life better. And Abraham Joshua Heschel says that we are God's investment in history. I probably told you the story about my best friend, Ruben List, may he rest in peace. He died a couple years ago. He used to be a shochet for for Empire Kosher Chickens. Died at age 66. Very young man with incredible spirit. And he once told me something. Why did God choose the Jews? Well, you could say that we're God's science project, in a manner of speaking. God says, I really want to see if I'm almighty and all-powerful. And if I can make a mensch, if I can make decent people out of the Jews, then I know I can make decent people out of anybody. That's an interesting statement. Self-deprecating humor, to say the least. But the world needs Jews. And we are God's investment in history. And so, the choice of, what does it mean to be chosen? What it means basically, it's not a choice of privilege, but it is a choice of service. Knights and chivalry during the Middle Ages was a very, very special code. If you were a knight, you had to conduct yourself in an exemplary manner. For instance, if a young maiden was walking down the street and it was raining, the knight was expected to take his coat and throw it on the ground and allow the young maiden to walk across. A young maiden was never to walk on the same side of the street, just in case a carriage would come by and kick up mud. It should fall on the knight rather than the maiden. So this is the idea of chosenness, that we are supposed to live a more exemplary and better life. And with that, I wish you all a pleasant Shabbat Shalom, and may we become a true model of what it means to be chosen to the rest of the world as well, beginning first of ourselves. Okay, page 166. Aleinu Shabbat Ladon HaKol. Take it along your separation. Shalom Sanaka Goye Aratzo. Velo Samana Kimishkot Adama. Shalom Samchakeni Kohen Go. Aleinu Kacham Onam. Benach Mekorin. Vishtachavim Modim. Machi Hamlachi Makadosh Baruch Hu. Gulmet Hashemayim V'Yotei L'Oretz Moshe Kadosh Hashemayim V'Macham V'Shim Ha'V'Zol V'Shim Ha'V'Zol Evol V'Yotei L'Oretz V'Yitku Eloheinu 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 Bakatu V'Toratu V'Yatayim Yatayim V'Yashemotza V'Yatayim Yadonai Hu Elohim B'Shamayim V'Macham V'Ha'aretz V'Ha'aretz V'Tachadenu Ein Om V'Giduk Tortecha Na'im Ha'Kladam V'Ed V'Ne'ema V'Haya Adonai Melech HaKoretz Yom Hahu V'Yom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad V'Shemo V'Shemo Echad V'Shemo Echad. Okay, anyone wishing to say Kaddish? Anyone observing Yahrzeit? Okay, page 184. Yit gadal, yit gadash, shemei rabah, v'yamad baruch yirtei, v'yamlich malchotei, v'chayichon, v'meichon, v'chaydacha v'yisrael, v'agalav v'zmakari, v'mramei, v'hei shmei rabah, v'barach, v'lam v'lamei lamaya, yit barach v'yishtabach, v'pa'al, v'trumam v'yitnasei, v'hadar, v'tali v'tala shmei kutra, v'rechu, leila, nikol, v'chata, v'sherata, v'shafata, v'nahamata, v'amir, v'yamad, v'mramei, Yehi Shalom Rabbim Shemayim, V'chaim Aleinu, V'akol Yisrael V'ramein, V'oseh Shalom V'ramein, V'yaseh Shalom, Amen V'akol Yisrael V'ramein. Call now through the benediction. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Yair Adonai panav elecha v'yichanecha, Yis Adonai panav elecha v'yosem b'cha shalom. May God bless you and protect you. May He lift His countenance unto you, be gracious to you. May He lift His presence always to you and grant you the greatest blessing of all, Pasa de Menta, the peace of mind that comes with Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom.